Hi, Catherine and Sean. Thank you for joining me on this Speciality Food Talk series. Today we're going to be talking about plastic-free solutions. So if you could both just introduce yourselves, tell us about your experience and your role in the industry, please.
You go
Catherine?
first.
Shall I start?
Yeah, you go
Great.
first.
So my name's Sean Sutherland, and I'm co-founder of an organization called A Plastic Planet. And we exist really for one purpose only, a single-minded mission, which is to ignite and inspire the world to turn off the plastic tap. We work with industry. Obviously, we do a lot of work in the food and drink sector, but we also increasingly work in other areas like fashion. And we really try and work with industry, pro solutions, on helping them change faster.
Catherine.
I'm Catherine. I'm the founder of Unpackaged. So we started as a zero waste shop 14 years ago now, and we've steadily grown, and just now we work within other people's businesses. So we grew with Planet Organic, and then we started working last year with Waitrose and M&S, so trying to help different businesses implement reuse and refill systems as a way of solving the single-use packaging crisis, whether it's plastic or other packaging.
So my first question is one that's being asked across the industry at the moment. What impact is COVID having on plastic usage, and what's most alarming to you in that?
Shall I jump in first, Catherine? Because I know we're both going to have a lot to say about this. But obviously, there's been a massive amount of media attention on the massive increase in the use of plastic within our food and drink supply chain, but also elsewhere. If you look at personal care, you look at PPE. Don't even get me going. How many interviews have I done about PPE? This massive plastic iceberg that you could see coming a mile off, that somehow we think we cannot protect ourselves and protect the planet at the same time. Kind of bonkers. But you could understand that at the beginning of the pandemic, there was this massive fear-driven knee-jerk reaction. And we went back to using this dinosaur toxic, indestructible material that we've been using for 50 years, plastic. But I feel hopeful now that something else has happened through the pandemic, which is that we care and we want to be connected to nature in a way that we have lost connection. And the pandemic has really made us appreciate every minute that we're spending outdoors now. It's nothing like having something taken away from you so that you desperately want it. And of course, if we suddenly were all in lockdown and you're allowed to go outside for half an hour a day, the sky is bluer. The trees are greener. Everything felt so much better to us. I feel very optimistic now that pendulum that swung so far the wrong way, largely down to the efforts of the lobbyists of the plastic and the fossil fuel industries, US, UK, that pendulum is going to swing all the way back. And it's up to all of us now to get behind that pendulum and make sure that it swings even further and even faster. We have to have learned something from this. You cannot have healthy people on an unhealthy planet.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with that. I think from an unpackaged sort of mainly within the retail environment, I think there was initially a lot of nervousness about loose food in general. So that could be loose fruit and veg, obviously loose products that we do, which are refills. And I think it was understandable. I think there was both a nervousness about the food itself and whether the food could transmit, which all science points to the fact that it can't. The surfaces and just how people interacted with things. A lot of retail has moved. I guess a lot of supermarkets have even tried to move towards more how they sell food within the independent sector. So it's all very abundant and open, and you can choose and pick the products you want. So I think there was a real nervousness over multiple people touching those surfaces. But then from a consumer point of view, I think it's all shopping in a supermarket environment certainly has been about how can I get in and out fast enough. But I think the other benefit has been people returning to independent stores, which has just been fantastic because we work both with the independent sector and big retailers. And you suddenly see all of these local stores because people feel much more comfortable going in and buying there. They might, they might be buying more ingredients to do scratch cooking and things. So that plays very well into the independent sector, butchers, bakers, farm shops, things like that. So I think there's actually been a real opportunity for those independents to remind everyone what a lovely shopping experience it was. And a lot of people are now saying how they're going to carry on shopping like that. So I think there has been an increase in plastic, but within the retailers that we work with, everyone has carried on selling bulk, offering bulk, and still allowing people to bring their own containers, which has been just actually a really pleasant surprise that people realised quite early on that that wasn't where the risk lay and that they could continue doing that.
Yeah, I think the other thing that it's given us, the whole pandemic, much as there has been devastating consequences of it, there's also been some things that I think are actually quite exciting. And one of them for me, I had a big talk with the co-op yesterday, and we were talking about there is this moment right now where we can reinvent our entire food supply system, that we can buy more locally, more seasonally, that we can support communities in a different way. And organizations, obviously like the co-op, that for me have always been intrinsically more community focused than perhaps some of the bigger supermarkets, with a different kind of ownership structure, like Iceland Foods, a different kind of ownership structure, that we've got this moment now of us thinking, rather than emulating the US massively long supply chains, which has meant that, of course, we had empty shelves, but also it has meant that we have a ridiculous amount of packaging on everything, because of the supply chain, not because of the moment I take it from the supermarket shelf and get it home. That isn't where the packaging is needed most of the time. It's in order to get it to the supermarket. And the long time, the wrapped cucumber, all the symbolic things of the whole plastic pushback on packaging. And I think we have a moment to think differently, and to eat more seasonally and be more connected with our food sources and more locally. And if we did that, we could scrap so much packaging. We could really think in a different way. And I think we'd reconnect to our food in a different way as well. Look how many people have started baking. I mean, all the cliches that we could talk about now. It's really good. It's good stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So in the past 6 months, we have taken the first steps to brighter kind of reduced plastic future. But is there any other education that's needed for producers and retailers now? Are there any resources available to them that they can, just educate themselves on alternative ways to, get products?
I'm going to leave that one for Catherine.
I think there's loads. I think the interesting thing about, so if a lot of lobby groups and everything have been trying to get people to think about plastic as a problem and what the solutions are going to be, within the commercial environment, a lot of businesses have just seen the opportunity. So there's actually now, compared to when I started, where zero waste wasn't a thing, it was so hard to get interesting, not plastic wrapped products. Whereas now, because of the boom in zero waste, the boom in plastic free, there's actually just so many commercial suppliers that are seeing an advantage. Like Sian would be able to talk about all of the ones offering alternative packaging materials. We try and help people with actual systems, like how might you implement a refill system within your store. So actually, I think that in terms of what retailers can do, I think you've got to work out what the intention is. The intention is we're going to reduce our overall plastic consumption and single-use consumption, and then try and just work your way through all of the different categories and the ways in which you can do that, some of which is going to be easier than others. But actually, I just think there's a load of commercial opportunity out there where you can make those changes and make more money by doing it.
Yeah, very much so. Everybody thinks this is about sacrifice, and that actually what we're doing at the moment is the most economically viable and profitable. But I don't think that's necessarily the case. And particularly when we have things like the plastic tax coming in, extended producer responsibility, a true PRN, all of those things are going to start to make a really big difference. And what I found interesting is, of course, there's been a massive growth in online shopping through the pandemic, but the number of subscription models where we're actually looking at things that are using far less material, the number of things that are coming out in concentrates. So we're not shipping 95% water-based cleaning products around the planet. All of these things are bonkers. And as Catherine was saying, some of the new innovations now, one of my favorites, I don't know if you saw Walmart in the US finally doing a project with Appeal, which is a simple plant-based coating that you can apply to fruit and veg to extend their life, so that you don't need any packaging at all, because it's a completely natural substance. It's almost like giving it another little layer of skin. And the first one that, of course, they're talking about is the infamous cucumber, that apparently we have to have 4 weeks shelf life from a cucumber. I have no idea how nutritionally valuable a 4-week-old cucumber, because it's been sweating in a plastic sleeve it has actually got. But now you can buy it with this new material, which is just a simple coating. And that for me is the kind of amazing innovation that we really need. Because as Catherine wanted, the number one pushback that you get from retail is we need the plastic because otherwise we'll increase food waste. And it's all BS. It absolutely is. I bet any store that Catherine is involved in, and I know, everything that you're doing is growing daily. Is it Cotswold Fair you're working with now? Have you got a new partnership with Cotswold Fair?
Yeah. So we've got these units that we sell into the independent sector on the basis that they're sort of not cut and paste. What's the word I'm trying to find? Sort of a ready to go system. So the whole idea is they don't have to design it from scratch, and we come in and give them all the service to do it. It's about, a lot of that for retailers is about how to make it easy. Retailers have got so much on their minds, and so many things they're trying to solve. In a way, it's, how do we bring them those kind of solutions so they don't have, they don't have big sustainability teams that can research all of this stuff and do test and trial. So it's really about how to make it easier for them. But I do think retailers, they've got to set an intention that this is what they want to do and that it's part of their business. But I think due to that outcome that Sean was talking about from the COVID crisis, is it's so obvious that that's what consumers want at the minute. They want meaningful shopping experiences. They want, if they're only allowed out the house once a day, they want it to be a nice experience. They want to eat good food because no one's going out to restaurants and things. So everyone's cooking from home. No one's buying sandwiches at lunchtime because they've got to work from home. So, how can retailers really try and engage that and create this lovely environment for people to come and shop in and these brilliant products that they can buy, and hopefully make people feel like they're doing something good, for the problems that we're saying.
What I always find amazing is, if you go to Southern Europe, even if you go to France and you wake up on a Saturday and think, oh, let's go to the market today. And it's this wonderful sensory gustative experience, of seeing and feeling, you're there with the food. You go into a British supermarket, it's like a aisle after aisle, plastic tombs with sweaty food in it. It's just, we've lost that whole experience. I don't see anybody wake up on a Saturday morning in the UK saying, let's go to the supermarket today. Isn't that a shame? Because food is such a joy, it's such a pleasure in our lives. And I hope that this whole thing of, as you're saying, Catherine, people cooking more from home, maybe having less processed food, definitely less takeaway sandwiches, cooking from scratch, just relearning the joy of food and the seasonality. And I read a very interesting fact about how food waste is dramatically dropped in the home environment because we're there now, and we realize, I could just, pop that, and that's a little bit old, but I can make a soup out of it. We'd lost those skills. So I really relish the fact that those skills are coming back.
Definitely. And Catherine, as well as working with independents through Cotswold Fair, you have worked with some larger scale supermarkets as well. What kind of steps have you gone through with them to help them reduce their plastic usage and waste?
With that, because their operation is so complicated and almost very individual per supermarket, there's no one size fits all. So you almost have to start with a blank sheet of paper. But I try and start them with understanding who their customer base is. If a shop is selling nothing but ready meals, there's no point putting in bulk aisles of arborio rice, because that's not what people are buying and that's not where the impact lies. So we try and map out what are your customers actually wanting to buy and where's the heaviest single-use packaging impact, and then I guess what are the available technologies, what can you do now, and we sort of use those to create test and learns. But they're very much in the test and learn phase because they've obviously got hundreds of stores each and they need to start somewhere. So I would say that's where everybody in the supermarket industry is at the minute. And I would say because of COVID, they're now suddenly much more focused on home delivery as much as they were with bricks and mortar. Whereas before it was 100% what's happening in store. Now suddenly, because I think home delivery has gone up to about 20% of the market. We should say that 80% of the market is still in store. So they need to focus on that. But suddenly has opened up this home delivery window that everybody's really, really focusing on, which provides lots and lots of opportunity for reuse and refill. Which in fact there are some small independents. There's a lovely zero waste truck in Hackney that's like a milk float, and it goes round, so it's like a sort of mobile market stall and goes to people's streets and they can come out and refill. So there are ways that it's not just, the big guns that can do that kind of home delivery. It's not just Ocado and Tesco and people. But yeah, I think it's about lots and lots of different solutions. So for some people, the right solution will be delivery from home, all done very, sexily on an app. For other people, it's actually about having the in-store experience, because lots of people don't do things on the internet, or they don't want a home delivery, or they particularly do want to go into store. So, some things, a lot of the work that you're working on, Sian, with alternative materials and things, we need those because of the takeaway products, and we can't pretend that people don't want to buy any takeaway products. And so we are going to need something that could be an alternative single-use material. But it's really understanding how people want to shop, and then also nudging them. And I do think the shift I've seen with supermarkets is before, and I don't know, over the last, 20 years, it's obviously all been about price, choice, convenience. And we must offer every possible option to everyone in every store. And because of what happened with COVID, where supplies dried up, space needed to be reallocated to other things, they've actually gone, oh, maybe we could rationalize our range. Maybe we don't need 15 tomato ketchups, because mainly everybody just buys between 3 of them, So in actual fact, I do think there's been a bit of a fundamental shift within those businesses to rethink how they are running their businesses, which would come much more in line with the independent sector anyway.
Yeah, and there's other very exciting innovations, I think, when you look at something like, you'll both be aware of TerraCycle launching Loop with Tesco a couple of weeks ago. And albeit you can't go and get an entire Loop shop yet, because they don't have all the brands. And I really hope that other brands get involved and adopt that, because for me, the concept of permanent packaging is the ideal. So then it's taken the whole refill concept and made it accessible to people that perhaps don't want to shop in that way, but suddenly it elevates the entire experience. The infamous Haagen-Dazs ice cream in the vacuum stainless steel can, that once you finish with it, you rinse it out, you pop it back in the thing, because it's not my responsibility anymore. It's not my waste. It belongs to Haagen-Dazs. And I love that idea of, since when did this all become our responsibility? This whole thing of the waste bin. We have normalized waste. Our generation has normalized waste to an extent where we don't even think about the fact that we put a black bin liner out. Maybe even every day we put a black bin liner out. I'm pretty sure the reason it's black, it's like the bin bag of shame. I don't want to see what's in there. I put it out. I kind of hope that maybe somebody's going to do something magical with it. That bubble has burst. There are no recycling fairies. We all know our infrastructure is completely broken. Wouldn't it be incredible if most packaging was permanent, which of course is exactly what refill is all about. That's the origins of it. Use permanent packaging, but we get the big brands to sell the products that we all know and love in permanent packaging, so nothing hits the bin. That is the dream for everybody, I think.
And that is the dream. And I think, sorry, Holly, I was just going to say that I think small brands have got the advantage because they can move a lot faster with it. How Haagen-Dazs changes its operations to actually manage that is huge. So yeah, there's definitely an advantage to the smaller operators that they can move faster with it. Yeah.
And Sian, and you ran a 2017 campaign kind of lobbying supermarkets to launch plastic-free aisles. How has that developed since then? Because obviously I'm guessing you're working with, the big boys, the larger scale businesses there.
Well, I think in many ways it was a catalyst for change. So, there's no coincidence that we didn't open the plastic-free aisle in the UK, where I think, our supermarkets, to be honest, have been very, very slow to change. A lot of rhetoric, a lot of Pax Pledges words, a lot of UK Plastic Pact, zero change. In reality, walk into a supermarket today and tell me what's happened in the last 3 years for a lot of them. So opening the aisle in Amsterdam, I think, was a real catalyst for change. And obviously that happened at a time where we'd also just had Blue Planet 2. So there was this mass awareness. Here was the symbol of hope that we don't need to wait 5 years. We could actually shop plastic free today. And since then, we've done a number of projects, but we've really expanded our offer to working with the brands, because we see it as, the retailers can do so much, and of course they should, and they need to do a lot more faster. But the brands actually are where we can put a lot of effort and stimulus and try and accelerate change with them. So one of the projects that we're doing right now is very much in that world of takeaway, because the other thing that's happened, of course, with the pandemic is everything has become a little sachet. So if you go into a McDonald's right now, if you go into any fast food place, if you order a takeaway, then you are going to get about 5 little Heinz tomato ketchup sachets. So a project that we're doing right now, because ironically, the campaign that we launched for 2020 in February is Sack the Sachet. Little did we know that that a pandemic was coming, and the escalation in the number of single-use plastic sachets was just going to go off the charts. 855 billion plastic sachets are used every single year, largely in developing countries. We all know where they're going to end up. They're valueless, they're uncollectible, they're unrecyclable. And so, and I believe that we can change. I believe that if we can send a spaceship to Mars, let's just crack the sachet first, eh? Let's just solve that thing. So we're working with Kraft Heinz on a fast track project. Where we are absolutely determined that we're going to crack the tomato ketchup sachet for them, because that's 90% of their volume in sachets. And I believe that we're going to do it because there's so many interesting new coatings and laminates and materials and technology. And of course, it has to be something that nature knows how to handle. It has to be something that doesn't go into yet another infrastructure that is already failing us. But it has to be something that performs. And it's a very big challenge because, tomato ketchup, who knew? I know a lot about tomato ketchup now, but the pH level and the qualities that you need. Plastic's been incredible for that, but no more. We can no longer use plastic in this way. I absolutely foresee a day where plastic will be illegal to wrap our food and drink.
And do you find that producers and brands of all different sizes, are they open to making these changes, or has there been a big pushback? And are smaller brands, do they tend to be more open to making these changes? Because I guess it's easier for them to do. It's a shorter process.
Absolutely, because they could start right at the beginning. And I think any brand that comes to market right now, particularly a specialty food and drink brand, if there is any way that you can come to market plastic free, you would, because that's a massive reason to buy now, is to have your product plastic free. And we know that because of our plastic-free certification mark and the number of brands that come to us to be certified. And in fact, through the whole of the pandemic, we've paused certifications because we wanted to re-author the entire standard, because we wanted to make it the most robust, 100% plastic-free, unassailable standard. So it truly is a world-class standard. And we're just about to press go. And we have a massive backlog, I think, of something like 500-600 brands that are waiting to be certified. So I think the smaller brands are already trying to do the right thing. It's the big guys. They're the ones that we need to see change. And I read a shocking statistic only last week in one of the many reports out at the moment, that if every government commitment globally, if every industry pact, pledge, promise, if the UN sustainability goals, if all of these things were actually achieved, then we would only have a 7% reduction in plastic pollution in our oceans. 7%. And yet none of them are going to be met. None of them are going to be achieved. So we've got to set a higher bar for ourselves. This is not fast enough. It's not strong enough change. We're not talking about little incremental movements of the Titanic. We've got to take the Titanic out. We need to put it in a totally different sea. I really feel like, this COVID has drawn this line. Pre-COVID businesses and post-COVID businesses, the businesses of the future and the businesses of the past. And I think there are many small brands that have an opportunity now to step over that line with confidence, knowing they're on the right track. They're going to be a business of the future. And we're going to see a lot of Kodaks in the very near future for the rest of them.
And I think, sorry, Catherine.
I was just going to say, I think so much of it is about knowledge. I am always amazed when you go to the kind of trade shows that Sian and I go to, packaging innovations and things. And if you look at it, I mean, it's got to be like, 98% single-use traditional plastic packaging, and then 2% innovative. And, what you guys do is, you have your stall and you show off all of these different materials and applications. And I'm just astounded that packaging designers, and I don't blame them because this is what they've been asked for the last 20, 30 years. This is the system. But they don't think about how the packaging is going to be disposed of in the moment that it's designed. And that's what we've got to do, is you've got to think about it at the point of design, and then
totally right.
It's going to go. And, in our case, try and get rid of it altogether.
Yeah. Show me a packaging designer who actually wants to design future landfill.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not what they go to design school for. but they are not trained. There is a massive, you're so right, Catherine, there's a massive information gap, knowledge gap between the makers and the converters with the designers and the technical specifiers of packaging. So another project we're working on with partners IBM and Adobe is we're building a platform on plasticfree.com that connects these two with all the information, global materials, local solutions, so that we can actually fill that gap and empower the designers. Because I sit on calls with people like, I'm not going to name anybody, but massive luxury goods brands in the personal care space, for example, saying we're going to develop the most sustainable skincare brand ever launched. And then I hear their sustainability experts and think, where does that LCA even come from? I feel that is 20 years old, is absolutely wrong, but the designers don't have the information to push back and say, actually, Mr. Client, I'd like to challenge your brief, and I don't want to use this sugarcane plastic that is actually bioidentical to a fossil fuel plastic, and the end of life is going to be the same. But you can call it a sustainable because the beginning of life is better. And it's really simple facts that we can now start to communicate to designers. Just as Catherine says, everything starts at the design phase. We need to empower the creative industry. It's really never been a better time to be a creative because they are going to be a massive part of the solution.
Absolutely.
And I think it'll change automatically because, when we go in and talk to these businesses, is like the consumers of tomorrow don't want single-use packaging, and they are going to be both your consumers and your employees. So it is going to shift. And we've got a world-class packaging industry. And, when I go to that, I think I often get set up in that kind of opposition to the packaging industry, like I'm somehow telling them their job doesn't exist. It's like, bring all your skills, just change the focus of them and change the design from designing single use to designing durable, reusable, refillable. But I think is what you're saying, like bringing it back. So the ownership, this is the Loop model, is the ownership of the durable packaging from Loop becomes an asset for the company. So it's a very different way of looking at packaging, and the costs associated with packaging.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're talking about sustainability and circularity, recycling for plastic is not circular. Absolutely not circular. However much everybody tries to shoehorn it into a circular model, it won't, because you only downcycle it. It's the wrong use of the material in the first place. If we have to have plastic, let's keep it for things that we want to last for 500 years.
And Sian, you've been working with Tams Packaging and Real Brands. Could you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yes. Well, as you can imagine, as an entrepreneur, I hate talking about the problem. I only ever want to talk about the solution. And it was actually a phone call with one of our partners who we work with quite often on solutions, because he's an incredible inventor at Real Brands. And he was saying, we're getting a little bit involved in, the NHS effort. We're getting involved in some PPE. And I said, oh, great. What's it made of? And he said, well, no, unfortunately, it's plastic. So what? We can't get involved supporting you. I'm really sorry, Ian. By the end of that call, we had developed plastic-free PPE. And it's really just, we did it as a symbol. We're not in the business of selling stuff. We're in the business of selling change. But we wanted to demonstrate it is madness to think that plastic is the only thing that can protect us. Because exactly as Catherine was saying, we're not listening to the science behind plastic, apart from anything else. The virus exists for 72 hours on plastic, way less on paper or other more porous materials, more like 12 hours. And yet somehow we think plastic is going to be the material that saves us as PPE. In a medical environment, it's closed loop. Everything gets incinerated as medical waste. Absolutely. There's not, they need to do what they need to do. But when you're talking about us, the members of the public, wearing these masks that you see littering the streets everywhere, we just wanted to try and prove that you could do something that is plastic free. So we developed this visor, which is FSC wood pulp and home compostable cellulose as the clear screen that just flips up really neatly. I should have brought one to demonstrate to you. But it's only for those situations where you absolutely have to have something that is not reusable. And that is occasionally things like, hair salons. They're used a lot in hair salons, film shoots, where it's really important to be able to see somebody's expression. And a mask, obviously, I don't know how many times you've been to the bank or anywhere like that, and nobody knows what you're talking about. Yeah. Those masks are, I think we've become kind of desensitized to them already, but actually it's a very tough thing for society, I think, to have half your face covered up all the time.
Definitely. And have either of you seen any other exciting inventions or collaborations that you think deserve a shout out and maybe the audience could look into?
Oh, I should have prepared that one better. Sean, you go, and then I'll think of
Okay,
one.
I'll talk about a couple of things I think are really quite exciting. And one is, somebody said to me yesterday, is there one business that you think is really doing a great job? And I stumbled for a bit, and then I thought, oh yeah, it's Brewdog. And I don't know if anybody knows anything about Brewdog, but how Brewdog, who is, like, it's a beer for the people already, isn't it? It's crowdfunded. It's got something like 16,000 equity punks that really own the shares within Brewdog. Phenomenal brand. And what they are doing in the world of sustainability, the world of waste, they're actually starting to use the waste cans from other brands' production. They're going to take them and just oversticker them so that the aluminium doesn't get a waste in any way. It doesn't even have to go back and be resmelted. They're doing a massive event called AltCop, which is going to be replacing the fact that, COP26, for some reason we thought this could happen. Your event could still happen, but we couldn't actually do COP26 for another year, because the planet doesn't matter. Unbelievable. But they did. I don't know if anyone has seen the campaign that they're doing, which is FU CO2 in The Economist, and they're massive, going carbon neutral. They bought the renewable energy, the big wind turbines, massive peatlands, because they didn't believe in carbon offsets. Well done. So that's a business that I just think we need to applaud businesses like that, because they are doing things very differently. I think people love them even more for it. And they're doing it in true Brewdog punk style. So I love that.
No, that's so good. I think one of the recent projects that we worked in was the Able and Cole Club Zero. So obviously Able and Cole are still within the independent sector. And they send out their fruit and veg boxes every week. And we designed a reusable system, but it's a bit different to Loop. So Loop is all about these very beautiful, beautifully designed, durable packaging containers. But what we wanted to do was actually use the Able and Cole model, which is that every week their customers already leave out cardboard boxes to go back and be reused. So we created, I think they were originally called the Fuglies, but they were designed to be ugly transit containers. And the education piece for the customer was, when you get your lentils in this, effectively, like it looked like a big sort of tub of E45, then pour it straight into your jar at home. Because what we wanted to track was that getting it back and how many times the packaging could go around the loop. Because my worry with the loop system is what scale you've got to get to before those turns actually start happening. If you're talking about shampoos and deodorants and things, they're not actually quick use products. They might sit in someone's house for 2 or 3 months. So within a year, you might only get 4 cycles out of them. And I'm very interested in trying to build an evidence base of how many times these bits of packaging have to be reused to actually start stacking up against single use from an environmental perspective. So the Club Zero model is basically you get your products in what's quite an ugly, not very nice container, so you don't want to put it on your shelf. So we tried to design, in a different way. We tried to design the great design of packaging out of it, so people didn't keep them, and we've got a really high return rate. So they had to stop during COVID just because they had to really rationalize their operations, because they're, like every online company, they had so many requests. But they're picking up again, I think, end of October, and it's going to be really interesting, so we can start building that database of information. That's the other thing, is that we need so much collaboration across the industry, and people need to be honest about their successes, their failures, life cycle analysis, the customer interactions. People really need to start sharing that information. And to Waitros's credit, they really did. They invited all of the other supermarkets to come and look at how they'd done the Unpacked project, and so they really saw that actually we need the whole industry to shift, because in a way the retailers are right. They can't ask the brands to do something. If you're one retailer, you can't ask a brand to change their operations or their packaging, because you're just not enough of a slice of the market to make it worthwhile, which is the advantage that independent small brands have. So that industry collaboration is something that I'm witnessing that I don't know has really happened before. I'm not sure that these big retailers have ever worked together in this way, and I think it's quite a good sign for this moving forward.
Definitely. And we spoke earlier about how kind of the packaging designers and the producers, maybe they hold a lot of the responsibility in terms of the kind of life cycle of plastic products. But what responsibilities do retailers have, and also consumers? What kind of active part can they play in this?
Well, of course, consumers have got to champion the brands that are doing the right thing. They need to spend just 1 extra minute picking and popping it into a paper bag or whatever, rather than grabbing the plastic wrap bag of apples. It's just those little things, it's like, who ever thought that we would be carrying these things around? And it's a habit. It's just a habit change. Reusable cups, all of those things. Of course, people should be doing those. My big bugbear is for people, at home, cling film is the devil. Never use cling film again. In every way, cling film is the devil. If there's one thing you take out of your kitchen, take cling film out. You'll be amazed. You'll just look back and think, I don't know what we even used it for. It's so easy to get rid of. So I definitely get rid of that.
I think everyone needs to be doing something. And I think the problem is when we sit around thinking someone else has to do something, As a small retailer, there's lots of things you can do. As a big retailer, it's going to take you longer, but you should be doing things. Government need to be changing the regulatory environment, campaigners. I'm really hoping that the NGO message, and it's something that we've been working on with NGOs, and I'm trying to take it to them, is I think the anti-plastic thing has been great, but I think we now need to help NGO members and supporters start to be for something, and we need to get them to be for reuse. Actually, that's really what, in whatever guise it is. I don't care whether it's loop or, which system it is, actually trying to sort of really educate people on the reuse and the refill model. And it won't work for everybody, but there's a chunk of mainstream customers that are very capable of doing it, that really should be. So I think, but it's that whole shift that we've got to shift everything. We've got to shift marketing. We've got to shift the operations, the in-store experience. So it's definitely a long-term project, but I do think everybody from whatever role they have should be doing something.
Yeah. And then ultimately we need the big guys to take more responsibility, because I think it's phenomenal, the glacial pace of change that is happening. That here we are, nearly 2021. Who dreamt that we'd be nearly 2021 and we would still be having some of the same conversations and the same questions, and just think, how could things not have moved faster? And it's because every single commitment that is not met, there is no consequence. Absolutely no consequence. It doesn't really matter. We'll just make another one. We just bump it a little bit further along. I won't even be in charge then. It doesn't really matter. This is the world that we live in right now. And this is why we need more legislation. One of the things I was actually very proud of Iceland Foods, Richard Walker, coming out, massive endeavor to say, here is our absolute plastic footprint of primary, secondary and tertiary packaging, all the plastic within their business, they declared. And it's quite a shocking number. It's like 32,000 tons, and they are 2.5% of the market. So that gives you an idea of the scale of everybody else. And all the other supermarkets have said, oh, I don't know what the big fuss is. We've been declaring this for ages. I don't believe it, because the numbers don't lie, and the numbers don't stack up. So I think just to call for a mandatory level of transparent reporting is step one, because if we don't measure it, we're not ever going to improve it. And at the moment, I think there's an awful lot of slightly green, misty, I'm not going to say fake facts, but they are quite fake facts. We can't have that anymore.
I think Greenpeace and the EIA have done a really good job with their annual report. But yeah, we're about to start doing some work with RAP and with the Plastics Pact, looking at setting reuse targets. So it's like, what would that look like, and whether is that going to shift the dial? But Great. Actually, in a lot of the meetings that I have been to with the big corporates, I think government feels, especially in this country, government feels like they can't do increased regulation because we don't like red tape and we want to support business. But actually, a lot of the messaging coming out of them is, if we had more regulation, we would have a level playing field.
Yeah.
And we would all move. So actually, I feel like more regulation is, no one welcomes more taxation, but I do feel like there is that idea of a level playing field, that then we would all have to do this. So we would just do this. I think it's more welcome from business than government might realise, and trying to link those two is an interesting activity.
Yeah, because we have to take it away from being a nice to a have to.
Yeah.
And there's no coincidence, again, that Iceland have a very different share structure, as do Co-op. So, we need to look at how can the Tesco's, the Sainsbury's, how can the big guys change and be able to go to their stakeholders and their shareholders and say, look, this wasn't some nice little CSR ESG thing. This is something that we have to do because we're now legally mandated to do it. It does make it a lot easier.
Yeah.
I think it's incredibly hard for industry right now to change voluntarily. They've got a lot on.
Lots of food for thought. So thank you both very much for taking part. Hopefully we will have inspired the industry to turn off the plastic tap, in your words, Sian. So thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.